So we'll call this meeting of the U46 board to order. I'm Ryan McLaren, the vice chair, sitting in for Jack Bellendorf, who couldn't make it tonight. It is our tradition to start every meeting with a reading of our mission statement. Essex High School is a mission-driven and learning-centered community that believes through both independent and collaborative engagement, everyone can develop excellence in their individual pursuits. We offer a rigorous and varied curriculum and believe in challenging students to think critically and act responsibly, compassionately, and respectfully. We foster intellectual curiosity and resourcefulness so that students can engage in their learning to achieve the behaviors, skills, and knowledge essential to becoming contributing members of their community and citizens of a diverse and ever-changing world. The Center for Technology Essex provides comprehensive technical programs for all students, which include career exploration, preparation, and technical literacy in a respectful learning environment. The students will have the opportunity to acquire skills necessary to reach their individual goals. Like I said, I'm Ryan McLaren. I am the vice chair from Essex Town, and why don't we go around and do a quick round of introductions.
Alvin Barbier, school board member.
Bob Travers, Director, Center for Technology, Essex.
Rob Urton, Essex High School Principal.
Gary Baker, board member, Essex Town.
And Brian Donahue, board member from Essex Junction.
Judy DeNova, Associate Superintendent.
Mike DeWeese, Superintendent.
Great. So our first agenda item is visitors and staff to be heard. I think we have a visitor with us.
Thank you very much.
Will you just introduce yourself for
Yes. My name is Kim McDowell, and I live in Essex Junction. I think my family, unfortunately, is caught between Act 150 and 129. I'm not going to pretend to understand all the parts of those acts, but through Act 150, my son Maxwell was able to go to South Burlington High School, and I do understand that there has been some change, and I know that it wasn't quite obvious to allow him to continue, but I know that there has been some agreement that whatever had to happen happened, so he may continue, so I thank you very much for that. But unfortunately, that is now going to split my family up because I have Theodore, who's an 8th grader, who's trying to go to South Burlington as well. So we are kind of, like I said, stuck in the middle of those two acts. So I'm here tonight just to appeal to see if maybe we can grandfather the kids who are stuck in the middle. I understand that sometimes when you make decisions, you set precedent and you have to worry about that. I understand that, but I do think as far as the kids from South Burlington, Theodore is the only, if not maybe one of two, current students with siblings in the building, so it's not a huge number of kids that are in that same boat. I do know there are other children, including my own, who are much younger, who may come, as this act plays out, things may be different down the road, but for the immediate future, we're just seeking that Essex would be willing to allow Theodore to go to South Burlington High School, and I think from what I've understood, the revenue or the money needs to follow him there in order for South Burlington to take him. I understand that they've made some decisions that aren't very popular with you. I don't, again, understand the full picture, but as somebody who believes in relationships as one of the most important parts of high school, and obviously youth believes in family, I just wanted to appeal to you, and just on a selfish note, I'm just a mom looking out for her kids, so that's what I've come to say. I have a handout. I apologize. I don't know if I have quite enough, but that just gives the basics of what I have said. So that's my request.
Ms. McDowell and I did speak last week.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Of course, and spoke to this opportunity this evening. I was able to share with Ms. McDowell the degree of her understanding, which is very high, about the shift from Act 150 to Act 129. Act 129 certainly makes more expansive the range of choices for all high school students. I have communicated with the South Burlington superintendent this board's interest, that it not count against its cap, and all high schools have to set a cap, those students for whom they're already receiving funding. And to date, the South Burlington District hasn't changed that perspective. I met as recently as last week with their superintendent to reinforce the board's expectations around that and interest around that. To date, they've opened up one additional seat beyond those for whom they're receiving fundamentally tuition. The superintendent appreciated the additional conversation, said he further appreciated our perspective. We'll be giving that some more thought. There was no commitment to a review timeline around that. Ms. McDowell and I spoke last week about the double jeopardy sort of condition that this board finds itself in respect to Act 129, the law that's about to take effect in a month or so, not requiring that the tuition dollars follow students, or that ADM follow students. And as a result, you're receiving a number of new students next year who are exercising choice. And for those of our kids going to South Burlington, we're committed to ensuring their continuation there. And as a requirement, as you accurately said, we are paying tuition on their behalf. Grant did provide to you at an earlier date during the budget conversation the implications around that, and that's where we find ourselves. It certainly is an expectation under the guidelines of Act 129 that families that have pre-existing siblings in a system provide preferential consideration within the lottery choices itself. So I don't know the ins and outs of that lottery, and I can only assume that has occurred in terms of the preferential consideration.
Is that, I'm sorry to interrupt, is that from South Burlington? Because I know there was only one person chosen from that list, and I don't even know if our application was there in time for that lottery. So is that what you were referring to as far as the preferred treatment?
Yes.
Okay.
The principals across the region all cooperated with a statutorily required deadline in the management of a lottery if there were more students applying than for whom there were seats at that school. And Rob, that took place back in March, is that right?
February.
Okay, thanks.
All your application was there.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a good question.
No, I
just so you know.
appreciate that, yeah.
Yep. As a matter of fact, you were extremely timely and planned well in advance. So
Yeah.
yes, yours was one of the first I received.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
So the Act 129 certainly did anticipate these kinds of conditions in which there could be siblings of pre-existing students already exercising choice, and it's for that reason that they did reflect back the expectation that family constellation be a consideration in the lottery determination.
Mike, did school districts have to report their established cap to any public entity?
Yes, we did. Peter Toms, within the Agency of Education, the person to whom each of us reported, where he was unclear about our reporting, he got back to each of us and just asked us to clarify that. So yes, we all had a deadline this spring through which to report each board's decision on number of in-migrating students that you take, and I understand that was to be published on the agency's website. I've never looked for it there, but I understand it's supposed to be there.
Maybe I'd like to ask the acting chair a question. Point of order. What's the board's preference at this point? Would you like to make this an agenda item right now, discuss it and come to a decision, or at a later date?
I think the way we
Well, could we poll?
typically
Yeah.
handle these things is we hear from our visitors, and if it's something that we need to follow up on, we'll schedule for a future agenda item.
Okay, if that's the preference.
That's my preference. I think that's how we've typically done things, but if people think otherwise, then
If that's the case, I'd like to see Ms. McDowell offered the opportunity to come to that meeting and participate in the deliberations.
Thank you.
certainly. And Mike, is this something that would require board action? I mean, my understanding, and I think you probably understand the acts as well as I do, because I'm not an expert either, but is that South Burlington's hit their cap, and there's not much that we can do other than continue discussing with them what goes into counting towards that cap.
That's correct. I hear Ms. McDowell's request a bit differently, and that is to fundamentally cover Theodore's tuition to South Burlington for the next 4 years.
Right.
Yes.
Understood. Because he's not currently a student there, that's not, the understanding between our school district and South Burlington School District is that the new law would, which doesn't require that to happen, would be
Correct.
the lay of the land.
Exactly right.
Understood.
This
Did I
problem-
capture that accurately?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
very much.
This problem isn't going to go away anytime soon. So I think this board really needs to talk about what it wants to do in our planning session in this area. I'd like to see it a topic, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, now I think I fully understand the request. And it is something that I think if we were to take further action on, we would need to do that at a future board meeting, schedule it as an agenda item at another board meeting. Is the time frame something that's limiting to us at this point?
Next board meeting is June 19th. Sounds like that's within certainly your timeframe, your timeline.
Yeah. Do I have to worry, I'm sorry, do I have to worry about the July 1st deadline? Is there anything that needs to be done because that's when Act 129 goes into effect? Do you think that would have any bearing on it?
I don't.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
No, and I would just add that there is also a provision in the law that on July 15th, students who are accepted could opt out. So I mean, I don't think that's going to be an issue.
So certainly, we appreciate you coming, and we'd be happy to invite you back for any future discussions about
Wonderful.
this particular
Yeah.
Thank you
matter.
very much.
If you don't hear from me by about a week beforehand, just give my office a call. We can tell you precisely, confirm the date and the
Great.
time, and any additional information we might need to help us deliberate that.
Wonderful. So I'm thinking June 19th. And-
At this point, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Could I ask one follow-up question? Is your son interested in the big picture program by any chance?
No.
Thank you.
No,
Yep.
yeah, thank
Yep,
you.
thanks.
Okay. It is not on our agenda, but if it's the will of the board, I'd like to do a brief recap of our committee assignments and where those subcommittees are. I can say from a policy perspective, there's no updates from our last meeting. Negotiations-wise, things are moving along smoothly, and I think that's probably all there is to say about that particular committee at the moment. Our next meeting's tomorrow, so hopefully we'll keep making progress. Communications.
I mean,
Go ahead.
if this is what you're referring to,
Yeah.
the race method that we have done. We practiced this at our last board meeting. It was where we came up with the various questions and things of that nature. As far as a decision-making framework, I think it's going to be proposed to you guys from all night. It's as if we adopt that, something that we can be using for large and small decisions. It's just kind of I guess we're looking at it as kind of a standard way of coming up with information and really dissecting the issues that are before us. Some will be more elaborate than others, of course. But we've used this model and worked with it really for the whole year, and then you got to see kind of a sampling of it, I think, in regard to our last meeting. Any question about that? Was that what you want me to mention there?
Right, because it's a participative democracy in decision-making, and democracy is not always that clean, frankly. So what we have to do, the next steps beyond this framework that you would receive, Ryan, for the CCSU board meeting, is to identify the stakeholder groups. And I think some of the work that the communications committee would be looking at would how a decision, how these groups would come to a decision. And that's where the process seems to be moving. We talked about some specifics at the last meeting. Some of the feedback that was received was very positive, and some of the ideas that were generated and shared were well received. So
Yeah.
I've read through the document, feel very comfortable with it, wanted to do that up front, because it's a lengthy document. So,
Yeah, and I think the other thing, it will help provide consistency amongst the other boards. So
Right,
we're doing
right.
things kind of the same way. We're getting different issues a little bit, but it's that good consistency for comparisons and things of that nature. I think is
Correct.
another reason why we feel it's a good idea.
right.
Great. I'll look forward to it.
Okay.
Next CCSU meeting. Leaders at work. I know Jack's on that committee. I can't remember who else.
Because of the degree of executive committee members on the Leaders at Work, they've taken a couple months off to rededicate their interest to
Gotcha.
other activities.
That seems fair.
That's it.
Am I missing a committee? Subcommittee? I should say. Oh, yeah, policy. No news. Great. Let's go into our principal reports. Why don't we start with Rob?
Okay, thanks, Ren. So you have a copy of the report. I'm just going to highlight a few things moving forward. Once again, extremely pleased to pass on from staff, teachers, in particular Aaron, but to the board in general about the teacher appreciation baskets that were delivered on May 7th. That was, like I said, very much appreciated. So thank you. Essex High School senior Tim Rizvanov has been named the Presidential Scholar, and that's really a significant accomplishment. We have had a few of these over the years, and that just is the cream of the crop, if you will. 2 students per state are selected, and obviously it's an academic and artistic accomplishment, and unfortunately, he will not be with us on graduation, because that's when he travels to the White House to receive his presidential medallion. So I guess he'd rather have Mr. Obama shake his hand than me. So I certainly can see that as a good step on his part. In terms of the report that I submitted, I would like to add that, yes, we just had the science kneecap test for our juniors a week ago today, and also we had our Learn to Earn morning extravaganza for all our sophomores, where we had a panel presentation of business members in Chittenden County, and students attended 2 workshops in terms of skills as they relate to careers. And then they gathered back in the auditorium to wrap things up at about 11:30. Second year we've done that, very positively received. Also on that day, I had the senior class meeting in the afternoon and reminded seniors that they need to be on their best behavior moving forward because of any violations, if you will, that would result in not walking in graduation, among other things that we covered. That was highlighted. In terms of advisory program, just to let you know where that stands, we've had multiple meetings and opportunities for staff and students to give input into advisory, and that's one of the NEAS recommendations, but we've been working on this and we knew it was going to be highlighted in their report last year. So the model has been handed off to EJWA for their feedback last Thursday, so I look forward to receiving that. In regards to the public events over the next month, there is one item. There's a lot going on, as you can see, that I unintentionally omitted, and that is on June 6th. Pam Hemingway will be having the students in her internship class present in the cafeteria that night. She also did in January for the first semester group. So that was one item that I left out, and I apologize for that. In terms of the senior class, I did want to spend a little bit of time tonight briefly. We have year in and year out outstanding performances by our students. This is our 5th year since we've gone to the Latin system, where there's students who are no longer valedictorian, salutatorian, and ranked. They can, depending upon what they earn over their time here, they can be summa cum laude, magna cum laude, or cum laude as you go through the data and their results. So a few years ago, we had one student who achieved summa cum laude. That is a student who over 4 years has an average of 97 or higher. This year, we have 11. Now, one may think, oh, grade inflation. I would strongly disagree, especially having the opportunity to know these young people and see the varied backgrounds of how they have taken very different pathways to achieve that honor. And I thought, I put that intentionally in terms of the report, in the sense that we have many high achievers in this class. Ironically, though, if you look at their junior kneecap scores, you would not necessarily get that same impression. So once again, it's one measure of excellence. So in terms of where they're going, I just thought I'd share with you. Obviously, we'll keep the names out of it, but I don't think they'd mind, to be honest with you. So the class of 2013, we have 3 students who are going to Harvard. We have 3 students who are going to Dartmouth. We have 1 senior who's going to Cornell, 1 who's going to the University of Virginia, 1 to Amherst, 2 to Boston College. Students are attending colleges and universities in Canada, Ghana, Scotland, and Costa Rica. So that is just a very small flavor of what this class brings to the table. And I really wanted to take the time to share that with you because a lot of what we have done collectively, you have approved and supported, has led to some of these outstanding accomplishments. So, and like I said, it's more than the number, 11. It's what makes up that 11. So I'm just really proud to point out some of the accomplishments of some of our students. And then there's many other schools we could go into as well that are highly thought of. We have students going to as the class of 2013. So really, really impressive, I guess is how I would sum it up.
Rob, do you have the number of students going to UVM?
There is a number, I don't have that number.
Okay.
Yes, and I should point out, for board members, if you're in the guidance lobby, that's where our map is this year of where students are going and the names and colleges and such, and yes, so but I can certainly get that number. It's a large number,
Yeah.
but I don't have that total. So that's my report.
Great. Thanks, Rob.
Welcome.
Definitely would like to highlight the number of events coming up. That's included in your report and just the org notes. Certainly we've had a strong board presence at those events in the past and encourage everyone to schedule whatever time they can make to see some of those capstone events, because I know they're, from experience, they've been very valuable for me as a board member, and I just certainly think the students would probably appreciate it. Bob?
Thank you. So in the area of progress made over the past month on action plan steps, the area is student learning and achievement. Just received reports, preliminary reports on a technical skills assessment that's required of our programs. Judy and we were talking about measures the other day. One of the measures that is required of career tech ed centers is that we provide certain programs with state-approved technical assessments. They're both written and hands-on assessments. Over the last 4 years, 4 programs have been targeted, and this is an ongoing initiative of the state. We've been testing natural resources, building trades, auto, and pro foods. Moving forward, we'll be testing graphic design, computer animation, web design, computer systems technology, and just the other day, 2 of our teachers out from the health careers, the dental instructors and the health informatics instructors, went to Montpelier to meet with their counterparts. The goal is to come up with a technical assessment that is provided across similar programs that share the same course identification code, the SIP code. The first one they started with 4 years ago was the automotive tech program. It had the most possibility for success since it had most of the tech center programs in that area shared curriculum. We have over time been below the percentages that were set for us. There are a lot of, I think, reasons for that, but we made it a goal for all of our instructors who've had ongoing technical skill assessments to make improvements this year. A preliminary report from the automotive teachers as they got the individual student reports this year shows that out of 25 students who were tested in 4 competency areas, 16 of them passed all 4, and the rest of them passed 3 of the 4. So depending on how you break that up, we could say we have a 91% pass rate in the written portion and 100% on the hands-on. Or you could say 64% of our students got 100% of the certificates. But what I want to point out is that the teachers took the charge to try to work through the issue, and they made excellent strides. I'd like to point out that they did that at a time when there were technical difficulties with the online test site. Tests weren't released as early as they thought, and so they went back, changed their instructional practice to make sure their students were prepared, and they definitely were prepared. Interestingly, of the 9 students who did not pass one of the 4, they all missed the same test. that test was the only one that only had 10 test items. So all the other tests had at least 25 to 40 test items. And the one test that our students didn't do well in was one of the more higher stake tests. If you miss 3, you don't pass. So it may indicate some work that we and the state have to do. Very proud of the work that the teachers did there. Action plan priorities for next month. You remember Girls Can Too from last year. We're doing it again this year. On Wednesday, May 22nd, that's this Wednesday, we'll be hosting 40 8th grade girls from Browns River, Heinsberg Community, Camel's Hump, and Albert D. Lawton. You remember that the goal of this day is to introduce female students to what is considered non-traditional career exploration. They'll be participating in all-day events in heavy equipment, chainsaw, automotive technology, building technology, engineering, computer systems, and computer animation. It's a great day. 40 girls running around the school, focused on things that perhaps they haven't had a chance to practice, like using a bucket loader to move dirt or safe operation of a chainsaw. It's a great day. See, public events. When I wrote this, we were just going into our Employer Appreciation Night that was held on May 9th. I want to thank Mike and Judy again and Jack Valendorf for being there. We honored employers, longtime employers from engineering, childhood ed, automotive, natural resources, graphic design, and computer systems tech. These are the employers that make our career work experiences and co-ops an opportunity for our students. Well over 95 of our students will experience at least one career work experience that puts them out in industry for 2 weeks in their academic year. Student Recognition Night is June 6th from 7 to 9 at Champlain Valley Exposition Center. And what I would like you to know, you see that we had two CTE teachers earn their master's degree over the last weekend. I also want to point out that I think it was Monday, Mr. Dermeyer took his class to Springfield, Massachusetts for a trade show and competition hosted by the Society for Manufacturing Engineers. One of our students, Brian Nadeau, 12th grader who's going to Vermont Technical College next year, won a competition, design competition that was held featuring students from 5 different schools. He won $1,000. He featured the work that he was doing at Green Sea Systems Underwater Robotics in Richmond this year as part of his career work experience, and the presentation earned him that scholarship. So, very excited student, very excited teacher. I think that's all I have time to cover.
Great. Are there any questions?
How are enrollments going?
Oh, I should have brought the numbers. They're very strong. I think I made a report the last time around. I'll get you the numbers, but
I did see the previous one. I was wondering if you
yep,
had any
we're
updates.
still short in pro foods, but growing. We're still short in cosmetology, but we just enrolled 9 new today.
And the courses were over-enrolled in?
Yes.
Are
Oh, the gamut. Everything from,
pretty much everything?
yeah.
Wow. That's good. Glad to hear it.
That's good news.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens over the summer, but we're looking pretty good.
Excellent. Okay.
Anyone else? All right. So next on our agenda is a demo from the Robotics Club.
I wonder if there's a misfire on that. I wonder if there's a
I don't see any
communication
robots.
void from my office to the robotics club about that, so.
Maybe it's tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Let's defer that for now.
We can hold off on that. So next would be NEAS reports.
Okay, so I believe board members received the final report that was submitted, and what I thought I would do tonight is just go through some of the highlights, and certainly this is not the only opportunity that we'll have to discuss the report and talk about what led to the report and then what's going to happen after the report. has been received. I should note that this has not been disseminated yet to faculty. That'll be done tomorrow because I certainly wanted you folks to have the opportunity to see it first.
Okay.
And it also needs to be disseminated to members of the visiting committee, which will also be done tomorrow. So, as a review, the process occurs every 10 years. In this particular case, it was 12 years based upon complications from NEASC in terms of having enough people available for a visiting team, and also the fact that we were off a little bit by the building project that we had, so they asked to defer for a year, and then they couldn't come up with a team for years. So that's why it's been 12 years. In terms of the team itself, there was representatives from 5 of the 6 New England states. Rhode Island, I guess, was the only state not represented in the visiting committee. Fran Kennedy was the chair. He's principal of Berlin High School in Berlin, Connecticut. And Greg Schillinger was the assistant chair. He's principal of Woodstock High School here in Vermont. They both were extremely professional and good to work with. The visiting team also very professional. And one of the aspects I liked about the team was the fact that I believe there was a teacher from Milton and one from CVU, and everyone else was kind of far away. So you didn't have a lot of preconceived notions of what we were coming in, which I thought was valuable. In terms of the process, there are 7 standards that we self-assessed, and then they came in and spent the time with us, as you know, because you were here on that Sunday, and went through the process of doing their visits, their interviews, and compiling reports in about a 4-day process. The teaching, learning, and standards, there are 4: core values, beliefs, and learning expectations, curriculum, instruction, and assessment of and for student learning. And then there are 3 standards that are support of teaching and learning, and they are school culture and leadership, school resources for learning, and community resources for learning. At the end of each standard, as they write up their summary, there are commendations and then recommendations. In terms of the 7 standards, we had 40 commendations and 32 recommendations. So what I thought I would spend at least tonight on is going through some of the key pieces in the beginning section of the report, and then just looking at predominantly the recommendations for tonight. And then we can have further comments at subsequent board meetings. I believe I hope there are page numbers on as you have them on your screen. So I would ask you, if you would, to scroll to page 5. So the 3rd paragraph from the top, the self-study of it, this is for board members to have a context and appreciation for the process. The self-study of Essex High School extended over a period of 18 school months from September 2010 to April 30th, 2012. The visiting committee was pleased to note that students, parents, and school board members joined the professional staff in the self-study deliberations. Moreover, the report was well written and consistent in its frankness, thoroughness, and level of detail in each of the standards, which provided the committee with appropriate evidence to support the school's findings of its strengths and needs. Now, this visit, we were using collectively the 2011 standards, which were modifications and changes from previous standards, which I believe were last updated in 2002 prior to 2011. So we received the 2011 standards the spring of 2010. So the self-study process is very time intensive, and as you probably remember, we were also in the midst of a kind of significant change in terms of changing the structure, if you will, in terms of teacher leaders, and also moving towards learning communities as interdisciplinary team teacher opportunities, which previously had been only content area groupings of teachers, which obviously still remain because you still have work that needs to be done based on respective content areas. So the point I'm trying to make is we were in the midst of some heavy-duty lifting, and the self-assessment is heavy-duty lifting at the same time. The last paragraph on page 5, just to provide a little more context, it's important that the reader understand that every subcommittee appointed by the steering committee was required to present its report to the entire professional staff for approval. No single report developed in the self-study became part of the official self-study documents until it had been approved by the entire professional staff, teachers. So the 7 standards that I referred to previously, each group reported to the entire faculty their findings, and it had to be approved by the faculty. So obviously there was multiple options for buy-in. On page 6, the second paragraph from the bottom, the first sentence in that, and just to reiterate, each conclusion in the report, which you have, was agreed to by the visiting committee by consensus. So the visiting committee took the bodies of work as they were divvied up, and at the end of the 4th day, they were meeting and they agreed to these reports by consensus. So I would ask you to then, if you would, scroll to page 12. In terms of the first full paragraph from the top of the page, the 4th sentence, Essex High School is in the beginning stages of implementing the mission statement and learning expectations in classroom instruction, curriculum assessment as articulated in the action plan for Essex High School transformation designed by the administration and newly developed learning communities. As you recall, last year, our action plan, which had full faculty opportunity for input, was really based upon our self-study. And earlier, the comments of its thoroughness and frankness, so the visiting committee did not find very much deviation at all in terms of what we reported and what they found. So we built our action plan knowing full ahead what our needs were or where we needed to shore up some things. So that, as you recall, we're in the end of our first year of the action plan and the 2-year action plan. So on page 13, in terms of our first standard of core values, beliefs, and learning expectations, there are 6 recommendations there as you see them. And basically, as I mentioned, we have 32 recommendations from this report. And the guidance we received from a follow-up meeting this spring was that around between 33 and 50% of what recommendations you get should be addressed within the first 2 years of receiving the report. So obviously, as we go through each of these, you can see how we have significant work to do. At the same time, we've already self-identified many of these items. So the 6 recommendations there: examine the mission statement and learning expectations to ensure that they reflect current research-based best practices for 21st century learning. The first time we look at revisiting the mission statement will be towards the end of the 2nd year of our action plan, which will obviously be next spring. Engage all stakeholders in examining and revising the mission statement and learning expectations so that the values and beliefs of all stakeholders are included. Create and implement school-wide analytic rubrics to measure the learning expectations that identify targeted high levels of achievement. That's already underway. We have a team involved with developing rubrics. Develop and implement a set of school-wide rubrics to assess Essex High School's 21st century learning expectations. Again, we have a team already working on that. Develop and implement a strategy to ensure that all stakeholders are fluent in Essex High School's mission statement and learning expectations. And develop a process to regularly review and revise the school's mission statement and learning expectations based on research, multiple data sources, as well as district and school community priorities. So in terms of the first standard, core values, beliefs, and learning expectations, those were the recommendations that were forthcoming. In terms of curriculum, there were 5 recommendations, which is on page 18. Ensure depth of understanding and application of knowledge opportunities for all students in all classes. Align the written and taught curricula and provide accountability for implementation. I think that's especially timely with the Common Core in terms of literacy standards, Math Common Core, and Next Gen Science standards, which teachers are already involved with. Include instructional strategies, the 21st century learning expectations, and course-specific rubrics as part of the documented curricula. 4, engage in a collaborative curriculum cycle driven by assessment results and current research, and ensure alignment of K through 12 curricula. And once again, through Amy Cole's leadership and work, we have K-12 vertical teams, and have expanded and are working with Essex Town to be inclusive in those conversations. So I feel pretty good about where we're at there. In terms of the third, teaching and learning standard instruction, for this one only, I'd ask you to start out on page 22 in terms of the commendations. And I would like to just touch base on these commendations because I hope you'll see many of the things that we've done in the last few years to be reflective in these commendations from this group of teachers and administrators in terms of best practice. Number 1, the capstone project that is assigned to students in the Academy of Visual and Performing Arts that personalizes instruction, emphasizes inquiry, problem solving, higher order thinking, and authenticity. Obviously, hats off to Julian Bradshaw, the fine arts teachers, and Bonnie Descatasi in terms of the capstone project work. And as Ryan alluded to earlier, that's coming up on May 30th, and it's a wonderful opportunity to see the students present what they have learned. Commendation 2, the multiple internship opportunities, such as those offered through the Academy of Visual and Performing Arts, STEM, and the business department that offers students personalized and authentic learning opportunities outside of the classroom. 3, the significant technological resources allocated for classroom and student use, and the trained specialists who support integration of that technology into instruction. Once again, I just remind the board the investment you made with our EDIS, Educational Technology Integration Specialist, Carrie Fogg, is paying off in big dividends. Teachers' consistent use of formative assessment as part of their instructional practice to measure student understanding. Once again, that's pretty widespread throughout the building. It's taken root, and that's an emphasis that we've had the last few years, as you recall. The grade 9 humanities team, Common Core, 9th grade core, not Common Core, 9th grade core, that engage students in cross-disciplinary learning and collaborate on examining student work to improve instructional practices. And finally, the teachers' extensive and diverse independent professional development in their content areas and content-specific instructional practices. So of those 6, I think you can see the move we've made the last few years to the learning communities, and the points of emphasis we've had are reflective of what they observed in their time here with us. And in recommendations, in instruction, there are 4. Ensure that the examination of teachers' instructional, this is on page 23, teachers' instructional practices includes alignment with the school's 21st century learning expectations. Engage students at all levels in personalized instruction, cross-disciplinary and self-directed learning, inquiry, problem solving, higher order thinking skills, and applying knowledge and skills to authentic tasks. And I might point out that student surveys, in particular juniors and seniors, students have mentioned the need and desire for more inter or cross-disciplinary learning opportunities. That's the last 3 to 4 years of data. Expand the individual and collaborative examination of assessment data in student work and use it to improve instructional practices. And 4, apply the examination of current research to improve instructional practices. The 4th standard in terms of teaching and learning is the assessment of and for student learning. And on page 28, I guess I would call your attention to the first sentence in the last paragraph. Grading and reporting practices are not regularly reviewed and revised to ensure alignment with the school's core values and beliefs about learning. Well, I would just point out that grading and assessment is the next big nut to crack. We've focused a lot of time with the New England Secondary School Consortium and the League of Innovative School membership in terms of flexible multiple pathways. And the other key component belonging to that group is proficiency-based standard reporting. And so that, I know one of the board members has mentioned grading, and we need to address that topic, and that is definitely on the horizon in the near future. So I just wanted to point that out, that has not been lost, and it is on the agenda. On 29, the recommendations in this item in terms of assessment of and for student learning. Use school-wide analytic rubrics in a formal process to assess whole school and individual student progress in achieving the school's academic, social, and civic competencies. Once again, we have teams of teachers working to develop these. Develop and implement a system to communicate individual student progress in achieving the school's 21st century learning expectations to students and their families. Third, develop and implement a system to communicate the school's progress in achieving the school's 21st century learning expectations to the school community. 4, analyze data collected from use of the school-wide rubrics to identify and respond to inequities in student achievement. 5, ensure that all teachers identify which of the school-wide learning expectations will be assessed prior to each unit of study. 6, develop a formal process for collaborating on formative and summative assessment strategies. And 7, design a formal school-wide process to review grading and reporting practices. I guess another comment I would make is, as we move forward, the local assessments, common local assessments, have typically included midterms and/or finals. And I think digging a little deeper, perhaps common unit assessments and what they look like as we're aligning them towards the Common Core standards and the Next Gen Science standards moving forward as a point of emphasis. Also, writing is everyone's responsibility, not just the English department's responsibility. School culture and leadership, the 5th standard, first under the support of teaching and learning. I would ask if you would scroll down to 37, page 37. First recommendation in this section, implement a formal ongoing program through which each student has an adult in the school in addition to the school counselor who knows the student well and assists the student in achieving the school's 21st century learning expectations. We have spent a bulk of this year working on this. We have a model that has been, as I mentioned, submitted for review. I also would point out that one of the legislative items that was passed a week or so ago, S-130 by the legislature, obviously, has the Flexible Pathways Bill. Part of that bill is that all students in grades 7 through 12 will have a personal learning plan by the fall of 2015. And I feel really good that we will be poised for that in the sense that Naviance is what we've purchased. And as we re-up for next year, a portal that we can also purchase will have a template for personal learning plans. So I think we're right on track and right on time to meet the needs of the legislature, which in this instance I say I would support wholeheartedly that move for 7th through 12th graders. 2, define, cultivate, and celebrate a school culture that is tied to the core values, beliefs, and learning expectations for all stakeholders. 3, implement more heterogeneously grouped classes to ensure equitable, inclusive, and challenging learning opportunities for all students. 4, engage in a goal-oriented collaboration on school-wide initiatives tied to the learning expectations. 5, schedule formal common planning time for content area teachers. 6, school resources for learning. If we could scroll to 42, there are 3 recommendations in this segment. Thank you for bearing with me, but I think it's important we go through each recommendation. 1, evaluate English language learning staffing needs relative to the expansion of the ELL population. And I think we've done that over the last year, and we will continue to do so. And we'll keep you updated. 2, enhance the special education collaboration and co-teaching in core curriculum classes to promote more inclusive learning opportunities and ensure that all students achieve the school's learning expectations. We've seen examples of that with math, with special educators. 3, develop a system whereby the school can reach all students and families regardless of the internet access they may or may not possess. And finally, the last standard, community resources for learning. On page 48, there are 2 recommendations. Continue to monitor shifting demographics in the community and at sending towns and maintain ongoing vigilance regarding long-range planning and fiscal projections. Determine the need for a redesign of classroom groupings, a different utilization of building space, and a redistribution of resources to fully realize the school's mission. And I think that speaks to a couple things. The redesigned D104 for the Fab Lab, the board has allowed us to put in temporary walls and break down permanent walls for flexibility and learning spaces. And it also, I think, goes, Brian, to some of the 2020 conversations we've had as we look at new construction of schools as compared to what it is now. So I know it was a long time going through all the recommendations. I just want you all to appreciate that's what we have to work on, and that's not all we have to work on. But that's a good good amount of work, and I thought it was very, I thought the report was well written, and the recommendations I don't have issues with, and I think it was what we expected. So that is just night one of a summary, believe
Yeah.
me.
Well, thanks, Rob.
Yep.
I can say, I mean, from my perspective, I appreciated the frankness and the outside perspective of
Mhm.
this large group. I think there are a lot of things that probably we all knew we can make progress on, and it's part of the continuing evolution of where we are as a school. Does anyone have any questions for Rob about NEASC specifically? I imagine
We'll have
continue
future agenda items on this.
talking about
Yeah,
this.
Well, I did have one area that I just wanted to quickly ask about.
sure.
I've read the whole report.
Mhm.
I've looked for the common themes. One of those themes has to do, and I think you touched on it, because it's a little concerning. Let me just get back to my original note here. Has to do with well, it has to do with 21st century standards and expectations. Now, in order to align curriculum to those standards, and we had the meeting with the leaders a few months back, it's clear that they're not ready to make any recommendations regarding graduation requirements. And to me, graduation requirements should be aligned with 21st century needs and student needs. So how do you propose, because this is a central theme throughout the entire document, 21st century learning, how do we get the organization to crystallize what that is and in what time frame?
Well, the 21st century expectations, that alone has to be more universally, not necessarily accepted, but agreed upon as to what that specifically means moving forward for the needs of
Exactly.
our students. Because right now, if you were to ask 30 different teachers what that meant, you might get 26 different responses.
Right.
So that's problematic. The other piece that's challenging, as I alluded to a little bit earlier, is you had the typical Carnegie unit, and you have what is, with the secondary school consortium, is more proficiency-based learning, where you would have the, the power standards, as you've heard in other curriculum areas, and that, the essential learnings of various content areas, which may or may not require you to sit in a seat for X number of hours. So ADL and EMS are moving towards proficiency-based reporting. Help me out, Mike and Judy, 2014, 15, is that the timeline, at least for ADL, is that what you recall? You're moving towards proficiency-based reporting?
2015, yes.
2015, okay. So as part of that piece, the secondary school consortium, part of their work has been to, and these are the organizers of this consortium, have been to reach out to colleges and universities in terms of the transcripts. What will that look like at the other end of the spectrum? And the feedback they've received, and I'm going to summarize it very briefly, has been welcoming, that they do this all the time with varying homeschool students and different type schools, that it doesn't have to be your typical, 90, 80, 70, 60, A, B, C, D. It could look something different, like
Yeah.
proficiency-based reporting. So that is another piece of work that we're going to be moving towards in the very near future, the proficiency-based reporting aspect.
Yeah. The central issue that I'm trying to get at is the nut here, that is, what are the skills?
Right.
And what are the expectations that go along with those skills as these students step into a more technological environment? They need more computer application training. They need a number of things. This is not a static world. And I don't see incremental progress towards a 21st century model. It's like it's tomorrow or it's this big. But do we have a plan to start chipping away at some of this? That's really where I'm at. I never asked for deadlines, but that we have a plan moving forward that gets us to a point at some reasonable amount of time. And I know it's hard.
To answer your question, yes, there is a plan. There are meetings that are occurring. A deadline, I'd be a little,
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to state right now what the deadline would be, because that may not. But there is a plan for, and the conversation is, as some schools have done, they've stayed, some have stayed Carnegie. Some have done a hybrid between essential learning skills and/or Carnegie, and some have shifted all the way towards the standards-based reporting. So that's something that I could say right now that clearly our staff is not well versed in yet, because we've been focusing on the flexible multiple pathways. The other piece, the legislature has also passed, two classes for every high school student, 2 college classes for every high school student
Great
to
idea.
access before they leave.
Great idea.
Absolutely, and Stacy Anthony's AP Stats class has UVM credit, whilst kids sitting in our building.
Mhm.
So that also is in play as we're moving forward as well, that opportunity.
I know for myself, that was a big motivator. When I was in high school,
Mhm.
I actually did go to the Angel Building at UVM for math summer courses, and that was a real eye-opener. It helped me tremendously.
Yep.
Uh,
So we're moving forward on a lot of
Yeah.
different fronts.
Yeah, it's good. Okay, we'll look forward to a continuing discussion.
Yes.
Thanks, Rob.
Yep.
And thanks to your team that went into, I mean, I know it was a
Right.
long process. And I think Erin probably put in a fair amount of work. She already
Yeah.
asked Rip at this point.
Yes, she did.
Right, so she's not here, but thanks, Erin.
She did a great job.
Watching
Yeah.
and RETN. Great, so we can move on to a zoning related request. Or is there a presentation or is it just us?
It's just us.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Jack asked that I have a bigger version.
Oh, great.
Video and color. As you're aware, Autumn Pond is a development that will become one of your neighbors. And per village authority's requirement, the resources for the project, architect and engineers have been required to exhaust all opportunities for second means of ingress and egress to the project. And Grant developed this slide to help explain it.
Right. I think
First of all-
Route 15 is on the right-hand side, right?
Yes, Route 15 is off that chart to the right. That is
Okay,
correct.
okay.
So, thank you, Al. Maybe just a little orientation would help. You recognize your playing fields here. What you've got is Old Colchester Road here, Tree Farm Complex out yonder, Fascia Lane comes in here, and Athens Drive ends right there. So the Autumn Pond development is central to that area. There seem to be 3 options to satisfy the ingress-egress requirement. Label number 1 is the extension of Athens Drive. That prospect would pose a gate that would normally be closed. First responders would have the opportunity to open that as they need. And a short section of road beyond there would need to be maintained and plowed by the applicant. So that is one alternative. Second alternative is to extend Tree Farm Road. There'd be a dirt road that might not be appropriate to utilize. It would require a large amount of road to be maintained and plowed by the applicant. So that's a longer stretch that the applicant would need to attend to. And the third option is the option that affects your district, and that is the extension of Educational Center Road. Now, that's the road that would be between, if you will, the high school and the rink. So if you're on that little path between those buildings and shooting out toward the athletic fields, that would be to formalize an extension of that path, convert that to a road for means of ingress and egress. Certainly, we would anticipate that some of your fields would be impacted, some of your fixed track and field locations out there would be affected. The district may at some point have a need to consider what that might mean. The time's not now, though. There really isn't a school district need to put a road in there at this point. This would, at this point in time, purely be for the benefit of the developer. Clearly, our residents over in Athens Drive would prefer some other alternative than to have their street, a through street at times of emergency. And they prefer certainly some other options, including the school option, so that's where the tension points are.
I did, last Tuesday, just down here in the junction, I did drive down Athens just to see what was going on
Thank
there,
you.
see what the lay of the land looked. I'll tell you, I'm very surprised at one thing. Right in this particular area right here, this is a very sharp grade and curve. You're talking about bringing emergency vehicles into a grade that's about 60 degrees. I really, I mean, I don't know who the engineers are in the junction, but that might be an issue in the relatively near future. In any case, whatever is decided, I can only speak of what I know. Number one, this is a very emotional issue for residents. They're going to be potentially impacted. And number two, development that I've seen in our areas have been that the developer has to pay for the infrastructure for the facilities that they need. This is just, well, we'll just leave a dirt road and tie into an existing development, and that's it. So I'm not sure where the thought process is in all of this, but I certainly don't or wouldn't like to see traffic cutting through the school area in proximity to so many students. Having said that, I mean, if Athens Drive, if they wanted to take out and regrade and repave all of that, maybe the developer should pay for the cost. But the other thing I would point out, because once you get to a certain development level of housing, then you need two accesses. This right here dumps it near the top of that hill on Route 15, which is a real hazard for traffic coming over the brow of that hill. So you could have traffic in danger there. I don't know. I don't see any clear solution to any of this, but certainly would not support bringing that traffic anywhere near where students currently could come in. There's a rule about parks, recreational parks, and that rule is you don't build a thoroughfare through a park. And there's a good reason for it, is because there's so many people in proximity to traffic. Now, and if you do, and your community has funds that it gotten from the government to build that park, once the government finds out about it, you can pay that money back plus interest for whatever numbers of years. So you can change the design, but you run the risk of losing the funding.
The first two options are the ones that have been considered at most of the hearings. At a recent hearing, there's some pushback that they exhaust all considerations. So the question before this board is whether you would voluntarily commit your property for purposes of the secondary ingress and egress, and it is our recommendation that you not.
I would agree with that.
They haven't offered to compensate us for it.
No, there's nothing more. No.
No. The other thing is, they may not need the second access up to a certain level of development. It may be above this number, then for traffic flow.
Well, it's not. I don't think it's for traffic. I think it's for emergency vehicles.
Well, that's what they're saying, but
Eventually it might be, but
eventually it might be, yeah.
Well, certainly the tech center had to solve that problem with your most recent footprint, Bob, with your building trades group. And That was solved through the Seven Meadow Terrace piece, where the old central office used to be
Right,
20
right.
years ago. So, we're certainly familiar with the village's requirements for secondary means of ingress and egress.
It may be of interest to the administration, and I just mentioned this in passing, that the master site plan for the town schools, there's a master plans that's on file with the zoning. Do we have one here for this, for our facility, with the local zoning?
I assume so, I don't know.
It may be good to have it on file and to review it, because it needs to consider future development, future years, and that the zoning board has signed off on the master plan. Just a thought.
Thank you. So this is an action item for the board tonight?
Yep, so we'll need a motion to either accept or reject.
I'd like to make a motion that the school board does not voluntarily place an option for emergency egress for the development of Autumn Pond
On school property.
on school property.
I would second that.
Is there any more discussion? If we all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Great. So, next on our agenda is board visioning. Ryan, can you lead us through a discussion?
Yeah, what I have tonight is sort of working on a 2-meeting basis. I'm going to cover some of the larger points of a proposal that Trifocal Consulting has put together. You've met Mary Jane from Trifocal. She's spent some time with the board and went over her approach to strategic planning. Jack and the administration has had some time with Mary Jane on this topic, as well as others. Your Center for Technology has had considerable time with Mary Jane working on appreciative inquiry and integrating it in. Your learning community leaders have had some time, Westford School Board, so it's a very well-known commodity and has energized the organization in a number of places with appreciative inquiry. I've spent about 7 or 8 hours with Mary Jane kind of going through what we might be looking at and trying to recognize a little bit of my knowledge of how things can possibly move into the planning stage with the school. Recognize that we've got an adopted budget for FY14 now. We've got an action plan that will be coming together for FY14. A number of things are already in place. So really, if we're going to do this without it becoming an additional burden and truly get the buy-in, we need to be looking at an extended stage. So keep that in mind as I try to speak, and certainly feel free to ask any clarifying questions. Just as a sketch, my idea would be to distribute the proposal to the full board in the interim between our meeting now and our meeting next month, and look for an action item next month. So with any questions. So the project goals as they've laid down certainly has always been focused around the strategic plan. But one of the goals would start off to train the U46 board in the philosophy, framework, and tools of AI, appreciative inquiry, so that the board can use appreciative inquiry as its primary vehicle for positive community engagement. We've got a number of issues, and I think that all of us would recognize we have room to improve in our community engagement. We're very reactive in our engagement, and though we've tried a number of times, I think that it's appropriate to look at perhaps a new mechanism for engaging the public. I think it's ironic that we're at a time where we just talked about the NEASC and we talked about things like looking at the mission statement, talking about 21st century learning expectations, proficiency-based reporting, our facility upgrades, our future. I mean, these are the things that we've got to get out to the stakeholders. I mean, certainly as a theme that I saw is the good work we've done at the high school. If anything, it sometimes has been done on the multiple stakeholders that it affects. the community, the students, and so forth. So that first one is a matter of, I think, top commitment. You know, this is one of those elements that if somebody else is going to commit to appreciative inquiry and appreciate and use it as a tool going forward, the board has best be on board and using it actively. The second phase would be to create the U46 strategic plan using the framework of appreciative inquiry, and this would be the process that Mary Jane laid out before. It would involve a core planning team, go through extensive work, interviews, generate questions, and then culminate in a summit, a multiple-day summit. But in addition, there would be a third project goal, and that would be to train a core group of administration and faculty at Essex High School and the Center for Technology in the philosophy, framework, and tools of appreciative inquiry, so the school can align their implementation of the strategic plan with the strength-based focus in which the plan was constructed. This isn't one of those things of, let's use a brand-new tool to create a plan and then stop using the tool. You know, this would be a matter of, and I'm convinced in looking at this that appreciative inquiry has a greater margin of possible success because it focuses on the strengths. You know, there's way too much focus on what's not working, and there's just too much personal commitment in the equation. So if there's a lot of personal equation and everyone's focusing on weaknesses, it's very hard to have that constructive conversation about moving things forward. It becomes us, them, and we need to break that model, and I think appreciative inquiry is one of the ways. With those project goals, there would be a series of tasks, starting with the board, working for the better part of an entire year with the board, having a check-in, pull-back kind of process, working us through so that we can take a large topic, maybe it's calendar 2.0, maybe it's another topic, and use that as an appreciative inquiry tool of the board to engage our public. And then it would be the core, we would work with the advisory team, which would be a small group, to start looking at the summit. The core planning team would go through their training. We'd hold the summit. And at this point, what we're looking at is sort of FY14 ends up becoming a staging time period, staging and preparing the board. And then we would start looking at the core planning team in FY15, which might be able to allow us to kind of get into action planning, get into release time, make sure that we've figured out the consequences, both the intended and the unintended, in trying to take this on. Really, maybe even put it into the budget cycle if we need release time or leadership time to do this. To take this on earnestly, not just for the NEASC recommendations, but just for where we stand right now in public education and trying to take on a longer-term vision of what are we going to be in 2020 or what are we going to be in 2018. And then the proposal also recognizes the need to say, okay, we have a plan, let's figure out our measurements, and let's go through the first year of the plan with some facilitated help in measuring, analyzing, discussing, and keep that first year of the plan sort of sets your path. And if the first year of the plan is one where we're sitting there going, what were the things that we were going to do this year? What were they? And we're trying to scream to meet deadlines. This would really be that sense. So it works out to be a 3-year engagement that would have us learn as a board these tools and begin to actively use them in engagement. It would have us host a multi-stakeholder large summit to come up with a strategic plan. We'd be able to address and look at the mission statement, look at the learning expectations, look at the facility. We'd be able to do 3 or 4 or up to 5 of the NEASC recommendations in this process, which sounds like it's in the sort of the sweet spot of addressing them. And we'd be able to go through. At the end of the day, we will have also seated a critical mass of people that have been supported and resourced within our communities, administrators and faculty and staff in IA, so that can start to move into classrooms, can move into meetings, move into peer work and so forth, so that we kind of change the paradigm. The entire package is in that $40,000 range. It would be potentially be able to spread out over 4 years. If we're able to do that, we have a chance of kind of moving within our current capacity. The board placed $10,000 for professional services in the budget. So this would be one of those things in maintaining the capacity. We'd be able to satisfy the contract, and we wouldn't see it impact the budget any further. You know, it's got a foothold in it. And there's potential that we might be able to get, if we do well, we might have a model that has some feet and some traction, and that might afford us opportunities down the line. So that's the layout. I wanted to make sure before people got it that they had a chance to sort of digest length of time, size of scope, and aspect. But you know, in spending my time on this, I was able to read the NEASC report very differently in looking to say, so you know, how do we make this change rather than how's this change going to be made? I was recognizing sort of the we part of it and just the essential role that the board plays in filling that gap, and that gap that we've seen, that gap of getting out to the community, getting out to the other stakeholders, business. I've had a discussion with Dr. Tom Sullivan from UVM, and he's very interested in talking about what a standards-based kind of learning outcomes, how that would work at the university, and recognizes that Essex High School currently is the largest sending school in the state. So what works here has an opportunity to sort of work in multiple places. But I think that's a great board conversation to the president of our state university, at least for our purposes to be part of the conversation. Any questions quickly off that people have, and just sort of hearing the concept?
No. Like I said, my model of strategic approaches has been the one where you identify a specific need, not on the strengths. But I'll look forward to the material and read through, so
Yeah.
then we have time to think about it. It's a different mindset as to how you approach it.
It is, and I must admit that I'm in the same camp. I need to, you know, we're
Yeah.
trying to judge the validity of something prior to being trained on it.
Yeah,
And as I think about it, sometimes I can rationally understand what I need to be doing, but instantly try to problem solve using appreciative inquiry, which is like
Yeah.
the complete opposite. Like, this is wrong, how do I use appreciative inquiry? And so it's hard, it's a very different model.
yeah.
So I'll distribute the letter of understanding, and I'll redistribute some of the material that Mary Jane had provided the board. I'll do so to the entire board, the administrators of the school, and administration of the supervisory union. And then we look to have a action item and some time at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Great.
good.
In terms of the budgeting process,
Mhm.
is Mary Jane using, would we be contracting with her, or is this something that, where she'd be on retainer and we'd
Be
be
a retainer.
So
billed by the hour?
Yeah, what she's done right now is set up a proposal with an estimate of, on an hourly basis,
Mhm.
and she's willing to sign a not to exceed contract,
Gotcha.
so that the outcomes would need to be delivered with a not to exceed.
Great. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, I definitely read the NEASC report in a different light this time. And I would admit that, while I knew, given the appreciative inquiry process, I probably should focus most of my time on our commendations. It's a difficult thing to do. It's hard not to sort of, you get drawn to the recommendations and sort of the changes that need to be made or could be made. But I'm excited about the process.
I don't think AI would have you ignore the recommendations.
Right.
It's
Right,
just,
right.
one of the steps would be to relate what needs to be done with what you do well.
Right.
Right.
And how do you grow that?
Well, hopefully that's something I'll learn in the next
I also have to say that I think it's a really good strategy for working with a large group of people who are broken into smaller action teams.
Mm-hmm.
Because it sets a tone and an expectation of how the team will work together.
Mhm.
But I am definitely a deficit model thinker.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it
we
takes,
all are.
most,
Yeah.
yeah, Western management philosophy is deficit model
Yeah.
thinking. So, but we have, as a testament to her good work, as well as Carolyn Dickinson, who's
Yeah.
co-facilitating. We've had a group of 7 teachers ask us to develop a AI2 because they want to continue with the work that they've selected and feel like they just need more supports.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Nice.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, Brian. So, accidentally skipped over an agenda item, our Vermont School Boards Association Code of Conduct. I'm going to pass it around. I believe we just wanted more time in our last meeting to review it.
Yes.
So,
Is there no one or?
hopefully everyone's had some time to sit down with it. Given our last meeting with Steve and Dale, which I think was at our summer planning session 2 years ago
Yes, a year ago, July.
at VPR. I think, he certainly had a high regard for our board and how we conduct our business. It's something we've done in the past, and I have no problem signing it. Glad to sign it. Do we need to have a board action?
You took action at your reorganization meeting,
Yeah.
and tonight's just the sign-off night on that. So
Yeah.
All right,
we're happy to keep those on file once
great.
you're satisfied and we'll be able to sign off on it. Rob, is there an extra copy down there for,
There's 2, one for Aaron and one for Jack.
great,
There you go.
one for Ryan maybe?
Oh, I kept one.
Oh, good,
Yeah.
good.
So,
Thanks very much.
we'll let you sign it in your own time. And just make sure to give them back to
Thank you.
our superintendent, and we can move on. So,
Thank you much.
we have, our next agenda item is to set a date for our summer planning session. And, my memory's failing me. Have we assigned this summer planning session to anyone in
You-
terms of the actual planning part?
You did a calendar,
Yeah.
as far as dates you had available, and there were only 2 dates that really, were times that you were available. Were you able to review that Google Doc?
I don't think so.
Okay, I did.
Yes, I made a printout of it.
Okay, so I noticed, in that Google Doc, the 2 dates that board could meet, your board could meet, was on July 16th, it's a Tuesday, either in the afternoon or the evening. And the second date was July 9th, also a Tuesday, only in the evening.
July 16th.
By evening, what are you referring to?
It was just,
Yeah.
when you
Oh,
filled
is that
out the
like
Google
6 to
Doc,
midnight, or-
you had morning, afternoon, and evening, there was not really any time frame attached, I think you can
Yeah.
determine
Okay.
those.
And
Those
July
times.
9th.
Well, I think in our previous discussions, we've expressed an interest of blocking out an entire day.
Because 16th gives us all afternoon
Yeah.
and evening.
Yes.
Yeah. So my preference would be to schedule the 16th if that's the only day we can make ourselves available for a larger block of time.
There's no July board meeting, right?
No.
Correct. Not for me.
Or me.
Okay.
Um,
That looks good.
Yeah.
So- Does that work with everyone here?
Definitely.
The 16th?
That's one of the few days that actually does work. for me.
Yeah.
How have we, trying to remember how we've gone about the actual planning of the meeting.
I think a lot, to be honest with you, and I mentioned this last time when we talked with, as Jack brought it up, is that there's, depending upon what we do with the proposal, there's quite a bit of work
Work
that lays
that.
off of us launching that.
Great.
And I think that there's a number of issues that are out there that I think that we're not, I think I speak for all of us, we're most interested in seeing them get on the agenda.
Of course.
It's not so much that we sit there and we slay the dragon of something, but we
Yeah.
get, and I think if we can do it through this process,
Mhm.
then we can get sort of multiple birds with a stone and say, okay, when are we gonna get to that? Oh, that sounds like a great time, so.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to take some participation in the planning and work with Jack, and I can see what might be available for facilities,
Yeah,
again, at my location.
great. Yeah, that sounds good, and we can, I imagine we'll have further discussion about sort of the,
Well, we came up with a list.
Details of everything.
With a list of ideas that we
Right.
wanted for consideration
Right.
at that meeting.
right,
The one I made tonight about this whole issue with 129, I think it is,
yeah,
and what our choices are. Because that still puts quite a liability back on this school as compared to South Burlington. It's not a level playing field. And it's not my idea of choice, but how do we protect our community? I mean, it's a huge issue, both for students and for taxpayers.
yeah, and I think at our June meeting, when we talk a little bit more about our visioning process and take formal action on that, we'll be able to identify some more details of how that day will operate. So the 16th of July.
Do you think of that as noon start?
I would think of that as an earlier start, to be honest, a 10 a.m. start. But that is just me. I think that gives us the most.
With the option of lunch being provided.
Well, yeah, you can take a break.
I think.
Well,
But-
it was PM and evening are
Yeah,
available.
maybe
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking.
Gotcha.
After lunch.
1 o'clock.
Yeah, so let's
1
do.
o'clock.
Or no, or lunch, whatever.
1 to,
1 to whatever, 8, whatever.
1 to
Fine.
8,
Yeah, I was
1
thinking
to
that way
9.
we could plan a dinner.
dinner?
Dinner.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Okay.
So just to get that framework.
Yeah.
1 to 8-ish, you'll think about the location and then
Yeah,
plan a dinner.
yeah.
Okay. So we can move on to our consent agenda. We have an additional professional appointment
Yes.
to add to our org notes
Yes.
that I can, you
hand
can
that
pass around.
Out to you now. This agenda, is the request to have Kate McDonald
Touch base with you in a moment for a moment after.
move to the position replacing Linda Deming at CTE. She currently is a EHS teacher, and I can pass out the information. And that's, approval would be pending our ability to secure an acceptable replacement for her at EHS
We're going to be interviewing soon, Judy.
by 7/15/13. So that's,
It'll be
do
before
we
that.
need any
Yep.
I've got my feedback.
That's the only additional professional appointment.
Great. Would anyone like anything pulled from the consent agenda for further discussion?
The only clarifying question I had was who wrote the April 10th minutes? It was unsigned, and I found out it was Aaron, so it's fine.
Great.
Don't have to pull it.
I'd like to pull the donation acceptance. Is there anything else?
Okay.
Is there a motion to accept the remainder of the consent agenda?
So moved.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes 4-0. So I just wanted to say that it's no surprise to me that we're acting on this donation. I've known Brad for a long time, and it is a testament to his generosity and his commitment to the community that he's willing to donate his salary and his time as a coach back to the program. And I just wanted to say thank you to Brad publicly because he deserves a lot of appreciation. Yeah. So I would make a motion to accept the donation.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Great, so we can move on to, we will have a brief, well, I don't know the time frame. We will have a executive session after this, but we can move on to future agenda items to be calendared.
So board visioning with an action item designation. And which cycle are we in with the VSAC? Isn't there a VSAC study that's done every 2 years on post-secondary pursuit for high school students? There is one?
I don't know that there's a cycle. It seems to occur like every few years, few years.
Okay.
They seem to do it when they've got the resources to do it, but I'm not entirely certain. Rob, are you?
I'll check with Lori Thompson.
Okay.
They usually work directly with school counseling.
Yeah. Isn't that one of the places that we were able to feather out the Algebra 2 data that that some of the success in post-secondary had some Algebra 2 connection to it?
Perhaps, that's a national benchmark for
Okay.
success at the college level.
Okay. Just was wondering, I knew there was an off cycle for it. And then the risk behavior?
We just gave that March 9th,
Yep.
so we
haven't
should get
gotten
the
any data.
results.
Yeah, soon.
Yeah, but I would think the school year will be over by the time we get the results.
Okay. So it might be going into the fall with
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Okay.
yep.
There's 3 signatures.
And was there an interest to add a discussion
Yeah.
about our relationship with South Burlington School District in regards to Act 150 and 129? I think it'd probably be
I don't
appropriate.
think so.
If you can think of things along the way that would just help me understand how to better inform you for your deliberation, just let me know between now and the
Yeah.
next board meeting.
I think any options, any approach as to how we go forward. I think when we, if I could just say for a moment, just this thought, when we originally approved the 20, we didn't realize that, as a board member, I didn't realize that it was a 4-year commitment rather than a 1-year. And when you take the 20 students that we've allocated, if all 20 were going to South Burlington, or any other school that's got a limit or we have an agreement with, it isn't $15,000, it's $60,000. When you start doing the numbers, it's 1.2 million. Wow, that's a big exposure. So all I'm thinking is, can we get to a point where we have some parity, equity, where we're not forcing one burden on one community to the advantage of another, and still preserve student choice.
Okay.
It just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, I understand.
Mike, there isn't right now a place where I can find where they've published the caps that schools have had, and I think
Yeah.
that would definitely be helpful to me to understand where we are, sort of in the
Scheme of things.
scheme of things, and where South Burlington is in the scheme of things.
I had that thought this afternoon. I said, I wonder where the rest of the state is on this issue.
Well, I feel like we might have ourselves a challenges for change
Yeah,
scenario again,
yeah.
in which we sort of did the
Right
good
thing?
the good thing, and we might find that others have protected a little bit more than we did.
Yeah, yeah.
And probably you'll wanna have time to talk about your planning day agenda
Yes,
and
definitely.
details.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Great.
I do
Right.
need, I'm sorry.
I was gonna, nothing to add, but I was gonna, if I could bring up the question of, do we know anything about the superintendent search? Any kind of timeline is, I haven't heard anything,
I've
am I missing
had-
something, or?
Yes, I just was told recently, I can't remember the date, that I'll be getting an update at our next CCSU meeting, which is next Tuesday.
Okay,
So we'll have more to bring back to the
Okay.
group after that.
I wasn't aware if I missed something, I just wanted
Yeah.
to thank.
So, if there's no other future agenda items, we will move into an executive session for the discussion of labor relations and a student matter,
Bob and Rob, if I could just tag each of you for one of those items each, that'd be terrific. Thanks.
806.